Hi, it's Nancy with my response to this week's question. Who do you identify with in this story and why? So this week's gospel text is a parable, and so I wanted to say something about parables. Often we treat them like stories with a single moral or a single lesson, but the word parable in Greek means something more like to set alongside. So parables are stories to make us think about things, think about the world and how it is and how it could be different. And they are surprisingly rich and thought-provoking tales. This one is sometimes called the parable of the Prodigal Son. You might want to toss that title out and think of a different title for it. Often we read parables as only about individuals, but sometimes even though the parable is about individuals in the story, the parable is really about kind of larger societal units. So parables can be about structures and systems and society at large. They're meant to poke us a bit, to make us a little uncomfortable, to make us see things differently and to wonder. And they're designed to get us thinking and talking to each other. So this week, I'm not actually going to answer the question. Instead, I'm going to raise some questions to, I hope, prompt you to think anew, to rethink about this really pretty familiar story. So to kind of move through the parable, when we think about the famine in the story, right, the young son goes off to this other land, and then there's a famine. And we might wonder, why didn't anybody give this guy anything to eat, right? What sort of place doesn't feed a hungry person? And then we take that situation in the parable and we bring it alongside our world, and we wonder, how do we treat the younger sons among us? And as I reread this parable again, I begin to wonder about slaves in the story. This is apparently a well-off household with several slaves, and I wonder what they think about the father and the sons. The older son hears about this party in the house and has to ask a slave what's happening. And then we don't know if the slave overhears the subsequent discussion with the father, but what if they did? And I wonder does the slave think about this? When the older son tells his father, for all these years, I've been working like a slave for you, and then claims he never got a party. I wonder how this claim of enslavement sounds to someone who actually is enslaved. The older son might have had a reason to be upset, but certainly he hadn't lived the life of a slave. And then I take this older son statements and I think about our times. You know, the older son reminds me of any person with privilege, myself included, who overstates their troubles. What causes the older son to think that he's been significantly unfairly treated? He lives in a society that privileges landowning people and particularly oldest sons. So do you hear any echoes of things people say today in the older son's words? This is a parable without resolution. We don't know what the older son finally does. Does he go to the party or not? We don't know what the father does. Does he stay with the older son? Does he go back to the party? Does the younger son come out and wonder where everybody is and come out looking for him? I mean, we don't know. And actually, no matter who we identify with in this parable, we're left to ponder the question, what would I do? So I've raised a lot of questions, and I would be interested in hearing your thoughts. So leave a comment or get in touch some other way and we can talk. And thanks for listening.